No, I'm not. Sharing my screen. Okay. 1 second. Okay, great. Now I have the video panel up. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Reena Gupta, and I'm so excited that your Office of Multicultural Student Affairs has invited me to celebrate Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Heritage Month with you. So I am originally from Belmont, North Carolina myself, and I went to high school in Durham at the North Carolina School of Science and Math, and then I went to undergrad at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So I'm very familiar with NC State and the Wolfpack family, and I have many friends who have gone to NC State for undergrad and grad school, and it's a great, vibrant community, which makes me even more excited to be able to speak with you right now. So today's event is about claiming your narrative, tips and tools on combating model minority fatigue. And originally it was in light of adjusting from in-person events to virtual events for your APIDA Heritage Month. It was meant to be sort of a guided facilitation. I in no way wanted to really talk at anyone, but now I'm going to sort of change it a little so that, and adapt once again, so that when you're watching this webinar recording back, you're able to still use it in a guided way and have some sort of discussions or reflection points for yourself or whomever you're watching it with. So in that vein, I was hoping to make use of group agreements and constructing conversation and discussion in the chat box. And so while there may not be an active chat box on this recording right now, there are ways in which there are some group agreements I want to point out for you if you're watching at home and taking this in at a later date. Is one, come to the table, come to the scene using I statements coming from a personal narrative whenever you're answering these questions. This event is about claiming your narrative, not someone else's, nor is it about telling someone else what their narrative is, the same way you might not want that upon yourself. So come to the table knowing it's personal. Assume best intentions, both from the thoughts that pop up into your head versus, I guess, anything that I'm saying, because I'm using I statements and I'm not trying to tell you how you feel either. But most importantly, I want to highlight this idea of leaning into discomfort. Maybe you've heard some of the things I'm going to talk about today already, and I'm asking you and inviting you to look at it with new eyes. Or maybe you haven't heard of any of these things and they kind of make you feel a certain way or bring up new emotions for you or feelings. And so I'm just asking you to take a deep breath, a moment of intention, and sort of lean into all of this with me. So let's get started. I think it's important to point out that I myself identify as Asian American. I am Indian American. My parents migrated to the United States from India, and I've sort of grown up with these own dualities of my own. What I found whenever you're growing up as an Asian Pacific Islander, Desi American, is that you have all of these ideas perhaps that form around your identity, but you also have these external pressures and stereotypes that you might also feel as well. So maybe some of these words ring true of your experience or how you've seen Asian Pacific Islander, Desi Americans portrayed in the media for yourself. So maybe one feels so other that they don't feel American, or perhaps you or people you know in your community are associated with school and academia and being book smart or bookworms. Or maybe you've heard some of these other pressures and stereotypes about how APIDAs behave, if you'll allow me to say APIDA, as a collective. But then we also have our own thoughts and our own notions, right, of who we ourselves want to be. And maybe it looks like this. Maybe I know for myself, I always felt too Indian to be American, but too American to be really Indian. So maybe you or someone you know, they want to feel more American, or maybe someone wants to break out of these traditional stereotypes and be rebellious or loud. It can be any of these things. But the point is that these dualities of being both one heritage but living in one place. So perhaps we all live here, but perhaps we've migrated from here. And maybe you have other intersections and other nationalities and identities within you as well. It leads to this other thing that we call being a model minority, or the model minority stereotypes that we kind of just went over some of them on the last slide. And these model minority myths lead to something called the model minority fatigue, which is when maybe you're this burnt out of living up to all these pressures and all these ideas that are placed on you. But there are other things that happen too, right? The model minority myths lead to some really problematic ideas. Um, the first is that it assumes we are all the same. The model minority myth assumes that everyone from this side of the world that's now here, we're all blue. We don't have individual customs, individual narratives, or histories. It might lead to microaggressions or just like little stereotypes and pressures that build up slowly over time, that then build up to greater pressure and tension and greater aggressions. Or maybe we see a lot of microaggressions in the media too, reflected in shows of Asian Americans, especially. It erases history. Like I said, it assumes we're all the same, and it equates all of us, and it erases and blurs some of the lines that we've had within our own communities and our own racial lines of history and how they've intersected. And all of that can really lead us to feeling resentment, maybe resentment about towards ourselves, towards our own dualities. Maybe it leads to extra tension of feeling like we need to be one culture or not, or tension between ourselves and our peers of the people we perceive as othering us. And it can also lead to this built up pressure. So that's sort of what we're talking about when we are saying using the words model minority fatigue. So now I just want to open up either this live chat box or in yourself, the chat box in your mind, and I'd like you to just take a few seconds to reflect on how do you potentially experience model minority fatigue, or what pressures or stereotypes do you even feel at all, just as on your identities in general. Um, for myself, I guess I can say that I have felt a lot of they see American stereotypes and pressures of being sort of more passive and quiet that might be expected of Indian women, but feeling this very American side of me that feels very loud and dominant, right? So that would be one pressure stereotype that I really would want to point out. Also, this pressure of maybe being a little bit bookwormish or nerdy. And I just want to say welcome to everyone who has um, joined too. So I'm just looking at the chat box. I used to feel a strong urge to not fit any statistics that come with being a Black woman. Yeah, because we're told we sometimes read figures about ourselves, and I think to myself, do I fit? Am I a number or am I me? Who am I? I feel like it's so easy to even talk about everything I've presented all of you. Um, and still forget this idea that it's about individuality. I'm just posting the group agreements in the chat box now that we have more of a live audience for you to refer back to. And then I just want to address Marcella put out a really good question that says, is it a negative when the stereotypes are positive? That's an excellent question. So let's think about that for just a second, because this idea of being a model minority comes with privilege. That word comes with, yeah, you might be a minority, but you're a model for everyone else. And so if you're being smart or book smart is a positive, right? But it is okay also to interpret it as a negative if that is an unwanted pressure that's being placed on you. Kind of, if I can go back to Rashida's point that she so well brought up, of this idea of that if someone's telling you what to be, do you want to be it? And it kind of goes back to this idea of wanting to be a rebel, maybe. But back to those who might be tuning in later, still just give yourself some time to reflect on these questions. Yeah. So NC State especially is known for STEM, and there are, especially I can only speak to the AC Americans kind of well, but expected to enter NC State and go straight into engineering. Or people forget often that NC State has humanitarian department, social sciences, liberal arts, but it is just known very well for STEM. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing to point out for Asian Pacific Islander, the AC American students. Thanks for bringing up those really great points. Yeah, which actually segues me very much so into my next point, which is you are not alone. You're not the only person feeling this way. I am here telling you that I felt this way, so that's just one other person. But I bet you there are also many other people joining in today, perhaps that you're watching this recording with, and they might feel that same way too, that even if we don't know how having dual identities and representing multiple cultures makes us feel, we know that sometimes it doesn't sit well with us based off of how we're interacting with the culture and the media, and you're not alone in feeling this way. So I want to give you some tools now, and this is for everyone, on how to claim your narrative. Just going to walk you through some simple guidelines, and please feel free to share your reactions to this as well as your own thoughts later. I'm going to give you some time to exercise it in a moment. The first one is value yourself. We can't claim our own narrative if we do not acknowledge first that we have one. So you matter. Your story matters. Your voice, whomever you decide to share it with, it matters. So I want you right now to say, I matter. My voice matters. Okay, so that's step one. So good job. You're already, 1/4 of the way there. Value yourself. Step two is establish your truth. So one thing that I've really understood for myself is that all of my different identities, being Indian, that gives me some values. Being American, that gives me some values. Being millennial, that gives me a set of culture. Being a woman, that gives me a culture. Being a college student, that gives me values. That gives me so many guidelines to live by. But what are your values? What do you as an individual believe? What are your non-negotiables? What is it not okay for you to feel or for you to do or for someone else to place on you? What are your deal breakers in relationships with yourself, with your family, with your peers, with a partner? That'll also help you see the positive side of what are your negotiables too. So it doesn't always have to be what you're not, but it helps you sift out what you are. And what do you yourself believe in? How do you, was this question for how do I define values? Truths. Oh, yes. So how do you, truth, what does it mean? We say that a lot. Thank you. That's a colloquium, right? Like speak your truth, establish your truth. What is your truth? The way I break down truth for me is my beliefs, my values, what I know to be true for myself, what I know to work for myself, what I know I like, what I know I dislike. So these are my truths. So I have opinions, I have things that go in and out. Maybe one month I'm really good at running, the next month I'm awful at running. But there are things that I've established in life that I know this works well for me. I know this doesn't. I know this type of friend does and this doesn't. So it's a work in progress to establish truths over time. And so that's why I've tried to break it down into a more manageable piece, which is values. Maybe that's your morals, maybe that's your ethics, your work ethic as a student, your non-negotiables, so your deal breakers. So I will not tolerate this in a friend. I will not tolerate myself treating a friend in this way. And all of this can be applied again to different layers of your life. And then just sort of your beliefs. What do you believe in? Maybe politically, maybe religiously, spiritually. What are those for you? And I'm not here to tell you what those are. Sorry, I know it's so easy if someone can, right? So the next is, again, I'm telling you to speak your truth, and I'm going to rightfully break this down as well. And so what I want to be careful here is I'm not trying to encourage all of you to suddenly go out with a megaphone and say every single thing that's on your mind, because I personally am very shy. It's taken me years to develop confidence in presenting and in speaking these things that have helped me to a wider audience. This is just another example of me stepping out of my comfort zone with courage to do that. And so, what I mean by speaking your truth is understanding, going back to establishing your truth, what your non negotiables are. What maybe it's not okay for you to hear from someone else, whether maybe it's not okay for someone in your life to tell you to go into a STEM major science, for instance. And maybe before today, you haven't felt quite comfortable voicing that to anyone and saying, you know what, I don't actually want to be an engineer. And so it's as you feel comfortable. Do you speak that truth to yourself? Is it you telling it to a family member? Is it you speaking up in this time to a professor saying, hey, I'm now at home in a different environment. I'm not able to complete homework the way I was when I was on campus. So it means a lot of different things. It means figuring out for yourself what you want and speaking it, and it is really scary. We all have different levels that we feel comfortable, and so that's why I want to point out that this level is as you feel comfortable saying it. Maybe it's just speaking your truth out loud with you in the mirror, but maybe it means taking this element of courage and bravery and thinking of speaking it to one other person. And that ties me to the next point, which is take care. Think about all these things. Do the work to think about it and reflect on it, but then check in with yourself. How does that make you feel? Was that really, really hard and uncomfortable? Maybe we don't do it again for some time. Maybe we table it and we reflect on how, and we just sit with the emotions about how we feel. What are your needs? What do you need to be able to speak your truth? Maybe you need to talk about it with other people. Maybe you need academic support. Maybe you need more peers. And that leads me to the next portion, which is build community. Find your support system and figure out who you need to be around you to build this part of your ability to then speak your truth and really not only do this work of claiming your narrative, but doing this latter work of then sharing that narrative if you so feel comfortable. Yes, thank you so much. I'm just taking a moment to read in the chat box. It has been really scary these days because there has been heightened microaggressions in society, in media, in our culture, that has been making it okay to use more microaggressions towards Asians. I just want to take a moment to point out a public health facet here because I am fortunate to have studied public health. There is this colonial history in naming tropical diseases. It didn't used to be called infectious disease. It used to be called tropical diseases, which meant it originated from the tropics. There are layers of colonialism and racism there, right? But there's this pattern of naming diseases based off of where they came. For instance, MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. It's named on the origin of where that came from, not trying to intend any sort of negative stereotyping, but only just so epidemiologists with their brain and public health minded people could then locate the disease and trace it back to where it came from. Coronavirus and COVID-19 has already been a strain that's been discovered. So it's not called the Wuhan virus, but it very easily could have been. And there are so many layers to unpack with that as well. But what Zena has so kindly pointed out is that being able to discuss that here in a space like this, being able to discuss it with your multicultural student affairs liaisons like Marcella, with your peers, with your family members, with other people is okay. And that really does help. And it helps those people too who are doing the part of speaking more actively on a louder front, asking others to stop those microaggressions. But for those of us who are not ready to speak that publicly, I don't know how I would feel about that myself, except to give a public health spiel. It's important to be able to share it here as well. So I've done enough talking for the moment. So what I want to do now is, if you happen to have pen and paper near you, or if you want to just sort of type in your notepad or jot in the chat box in your brain, let's do a little bit of this. So that your first prompt is, I want you to write down 3 things that you value about yourself, or think about it. And if you want, you can share it in the chat box. But seriously, this is for you, by you. So share as you feel comfortable. But 3 things that you value about yourself. And when you do this later, you can continue adding to this list 3 things you value about the world, your society, but right now it's about you. Oh. And once you finish with you, I want you to write down 3 of your values. So the first one was 3 things you valued about yourself. And now it's about your values. So that apply to the world. Maybe that's honesty. Maybe that's family. Maybe it is work. We all have different values. Maybe it's culture. Maybe that's why you're here today. Um, Great. So I'm just going to put in the back of your head the next thing I want you to think about, based off of what you said you liked about you and what you liked about the world. What do you really need to take care of you? Like, what does that look like for you? For me, I have to meditate. I have to work out. Yeah. I have to sleep. That's a big one, especially for college students. Whew. Um, what else? Um, I don't do well if I eat a lot of junk food, so I guess that's one of them. Oh, I have to talk to friends. Yeah, especially right now. If I'm currently living alone, and due to everything that's happening, if I did not talk to people, I would just be in the mirror talking to myself, I guess. I don't know what I would do. Let's not think about that. And then lastly, who is your support system? So who really allows you to take care of yourself? Maybe those are family members. Maybe that's a furry animal that you have at home. Maybe it's your classmates or your peers. Maybe it's academic advising, a club, or a sports team, a dance team, um, sibling, cousins. Yeah, I'm just going to give a few more seconds so you can, I don't want to stop any thoughts in action. But the other thing, as you're just sort of wrapping up this exercise, as I want to say, is that you can come back to this at any time. It's just another way for you to break down the guidelines that I just shared with you. But I do want to move forward now, but I do encourage you to continue reflecting. I sometimes find when I ask myself a question one day and sleep on it, the next day I think of so many other ways I could have answered it. That's especially problematic when I've already turned in an assignment. But it's the same thing goes for us. We are a work in progress. So now I want to kind of switch gears. We've talked about the ideas that different dualities and different identities can have on us. And I really want to hone in on this identity we have of being a student. And this idea that maybe you were in this position where you were surrounded by classmates, in a classroom setting, in a group setting, in person, with someone in person teaching you. And maybe now we're all in this setting where we're at home and potentially alone, or we're not at home. We're not in a place that we normally call home, right? Maybe we're off campus, off dorm, in a new environment. Either we could even be out of the state of North Carolina. And that's a really big change. That's a scary change. So I just want to share this quote with you from author of Hyperfocus and the Productivity Project, Chris Bailey. And he says, the idea that we have so much time available during the day now is fantastic. But these days, it's the opposite of luxury. We're home because we have to be home. and we have much less attention because we're living through so much. So we live in a world, we live in a society that is used to go, 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 and then go some more. Especially as college students, we're very used to multitasking, and we often feel like every minute of every day should be productive. But the issue with that in general, but especially right now, is that right now we're at home and it seems like we have our 24 hours in our day back to do anything. But we're forgetting that not only do we have these pressures of our identities and being a college student that we already have, but now we have news coming at us, we have media coming at us, maybe we have loved ones at home we're worried about, or loved ones we're not with that we're worrying about because of the distance. Maybe it's scary to step outside where you are and to get groceries. Maybe there's a lot of fear in the air. And then on top of that, you're telling yourself that you have 24 hours in a day to get stuff done. That is a recipe for disaster. I think Julie Olstrup, a photographer in Colorado, put it really well. She said, putting all this pressure and stress on myself, it's incredibly counterproductive. I'm putting stress on myself during a time that's already stressful. Yeah, it is. And it's hard to wrap our minds around that. It's hard for me because it feels so abstract, right? Like, what's stressful? I can't see it. Well, that's a problem. That's why it's stressful. So I just want to open the floor to ask you all, um, are there any certain emotions that you've had that you felt during this time, or are there ways in which you've been putting additional pressure on yourself? If you feel like sharing, it's okay if not. I Yeah, I think it's really easy for me to just kind of sit at a screen all day and forget that I need to get up and eat. Yeah, it's just we have so like no one has a commute anymore. You can't be late to class, but actually sometimes my Zoom freezes, so I could be late to class or maybe your Wi-Fi cut out or maybe someone else was using the laptop you share. There are so many new things that we haven't thought of before. Um, but are there just going to give a few more seconds if anyone else wants to share anything. Mm, yeah, like perhaps I should be even more productive because when I traditionally go to work or go to school, I'm a star student and I'm a star employee and I'm a star worker. And so now I can be even better at home. But I think the problem with that is not only is that not sustainable and leads to another kind of burnout, but if we forget that, sometimes we just want to lay in bed with our feelings, right? Um, Even when we are star employees and star students, it's okay to have that time too. Oh, yeah. And being available to family. And speaking of that, I only know what it's like to be a part of a family as a child, but there are people who know it as a parent or as a caregiver or as a guardian. And that is even more difficult right now. Um, and yeah, there's a level in our community that maybe our parents and older generations of our community don't understand self-care or are allergic to the opposite of hard work. I feel like my parents work very hard, so I can say that about them. But yeah, so these are all really valid ways to feel. The point that I want you to take away is this time, what we're experiencing, what we're going through is completely 100% unprecedented for everyone. So we've had epidemics before, we've had outbreaks, we've had pandemics in the world, but the ways in which modern society, globalization, and the factors that led to this current pandemic that we're experiencing is completely unprecedented. So if you don't have it all figured out, surprise, no one else does either. And that's okay. But it gives us the opportunity to adapt and change as we're ready and to come up with these new ideas. So what I want to present to you now is just a simple acronym in the flow of state. So I really hope that you don't forget it. It's okay if you do, the slides will come after. But these are just, again, some guidelines to hopefully help you adjust to not only these last 2 weeks of classes as an NC State student, but also help you study for finals at home, because I think it's already hard enough to study for finals, but I can't imagine doing it in sort of this new environment. So um, I'm going to go through each one of them, so I'm not going to belabor you by reading it out, but this is what they are. So let's dive in. The first one, S, set SMART goals. I think, I'm sorry, I think by now we all have come across what it means to set SMART goals, but essentially what this means is you now have to sort of figure out and strategize your day, because it's very easy to wake up, open your email, go to YouTube, and then get lost in a wormhole all day and potentially not study, or to be online on Zoom video classes all day and then completely log off and not do any of the homework or assignments later. It's hard. I'm not denying that. And so all I'm recommending is that you're able to set some SMART goals so that you're able to say, this is when I'm going to be on as a student. This is when I'm going to be off. This is how I'm going to do this. And this is when I'm going to study for this class or not, so on and so forth. And then I just want to share, these are some organization apps that might be able to help you with that productivity. I'm sure there are some of your own that you could recommend in the chat box or to your peers and classmates that you've used that work well for you. And then again, there's always traditional pen and paper. So the T in state is tidy your space. Again, you probably all have heard all of these things and know these things. I'm just providing you with gentle reminders because this is a stressful time to remember everything. But I will say, if you're now living in your study and workspace and it is not clean, that is going to make it even harder for you to want to roll out of bed or show up. And so some simple ways that you can tidy your space are making sure the dishes are done, making sure you make your bed in the morning. I normally don't make my bed in the morning because I believe it should already be ready for me to lay in at night. But now, because I work in the same room as my bed, if I don't make it, I will go lay in it. So tidy your space, keep your desk cleared, do what you need so your mind isn't cluttered. So sorry. Okay, next, this one's the most important. It's ask for help. I think it's even easier to hide behind our screens, to not raise our hand on a video chat with 100 people on Zoom, to not type in a chat box and have our name pop up, to not write it in an email because then it's in print. And it's so easy to say, I get this, I get this, I get this. And then 2 weeks finals come and maybe you didn't understand it. And your professors, because they're on the other side of a screen, they are not going to be able to discern if you need help the same way they might have been able to in person. So just stressing that let's normalize asking for help is okay. It's a sign of strength and it's a sign of admitting and being courageous and brave. It would be a weakness if you did not ask for help, right? So let's try to curb that behavior. So these are just a few people that you can reach out to in this time. You can ask me for help. I might not know as much about what you're studying, but I'm happy to provide. You can ask the Multicultural Student Affairs Office, and they could probably point you to even more resources. This next T is even more important than the first T because it's so hard. I'm so bad. I love looking at my phone. I would be on it all hours of the day. If I could, I would text in my sleep. But that makes it really difficult now for me to do any of my work, especially because I want to be social and see people and talk to them, but I also need to get my work done. So some ways to train your mind to focus and to tune out are mindfulness apps. I 100,000% recommend meditating, and these are just some apps. Most of them here are free but have paid options, but I enjoy using very free things, so there's some things there. The other thing I want to point out is productivity apps. So if you're like me and are identify as addicted to your phone, you can use these apps that you commit to sort of saying, I'm not going to touch my phone for an hour, and it'll track that or help you. And I found just after 1 week of using an app like that, I'm already picking up or reaching for my phone less. But if you want to be, do not use an app, which is fair. You can also just put your devices in another room. One thing I do when I study with friends is I swap phones. So in order for me to look at my phone again, I have to ask that friend, I have to interrupt their studying and get it back from them. So that's really useful. It's like telling me not to do that. But I especially want to point out it is okay to take a break from news and social media. You do not have to check Twitter at all hours of the day. You do not have to read the news every single day. Good on you if you are staying informed. That's amazing. But you are allowed breaks. And TikTok could be a stress relief. Instagram, they could all be stress reliefs. But if you need to take a break just for your eyes and screen time, don't forget to do that too. So just some more resources. And then lastly, exercise. And I'm not saying this to shame anyone for eating more snacks during this. That is fine. I'm honestly just saying it because getting up and moving literally releases endorphins that help you relieve stress and be happier. So I'm just asking you to get up and move, whether that's a walk and a run, whether it's doing some stretches, which can be really good for your posture if you're hunched over on a screen, whether it's YouTubing workouts that work for you, or honestly just a 30-second dance party. That's what I had to do before giving this talk today because I got a little nervous. But yeah, especially if you're able to get outside, practice, you can do a walking meditation. But please, please, please do not forget to move, because that is so important, especially if you are a student who is now in Zoom classes all day. One thing I do is when I'm in a training or a work meeting where my video's off, I get up and walk in place during that meeting, because it's just important to keep your body moving. Otherwise, you'll feel even more nested in your home in a negative way, and you'll take stay in place a little too literally, right? Okay. But that is state. This is just all of that in one slide for your easier reference. I just want to take a moment to allow more sharing than that's already happened, of other people sharing ways that they've taken care of themselves or balanced their virtual schoolwork, or for you to take a moment to think about that, because what I shared with you are simply just guidelines. There's no, unfortunately, one size fits all that works for everyone. But someone has pointed out insight timer, that's cool. Someone else has said daily walks keep them sane. Same. um, yeah, journaling, meditation. Cool. Well, we're skincare routine. Yes, I love the idea of establishing really healthy routines for yourself, like maybe getting in the habit of like 64 ounces of water a day, or taking, I don't know if you take daily vitamins, things that in busy normal life are a lot harder to get in. Now we can if we're able. Yes, journaling is so great. I found that if I write down my thoughts, I'm able to sort of just like table them until I'm ready for them. But if I don't write them down, then they're up here while I'm trying to do all that work. It's not helpful. Reading, yeah, I love reading. Please let me know if you have any good book tips for this time or recommendations. Yeah, I'll share some in the chat too after this. But I really just want to point out this slide. I've been seeing this graphic kind of be shared around the internet. I'm not entirely sure who the original source is. Oh, and there's a typo there. But I, at the moment, believe the original source is Dr. Monica Longue, and she tweeted this image. She has yet to speak out on who the actual credit goes to, but it's a growth and learning curve that applies to us right now. And so it's this idea that maybe we are experiencing multiple zones. And I would even say that it's okay to kind of flip between all three, or add some other layers of your own. But maybe we started off in a zone of fear, really anxious, really nervous, and maybe we've kind of settled in now because we've been doing this for a few weeks. It feels a little bit more normal. um a little, yeah, a little, we're used to it, and so we're better able to speak our emotions. We're better able to empathize with others. um we're able to take breaks from the news, and maybe some of us are ready to reach this growth zone of, okay, we're here. um how do we adapt? So I think most of you have shared that with me. You're sharing ways in which you've adapted. I practice gratitude a lot. Every single day, I think about what I'm grateful for. Empathy, living in the present, and focus on the future. That sounds kind of difficult, so maybe that's a reach. But I just want to present this image to prompt this in your mind. And maybe you even want to share what stands out in this image for you and which zone you currently identify with. I think I'm finally in the growth zone, but I definitely jump back and forth. It's really easy to jump back to the fear zone, unfortunately. Yeah, and I think it depends on if you, especially if you have finals coming up. I think it would be easy to have fluctuating emotions, and that's okay. That's the point. It is a-okay. Um, yeah, and so now I just want to open the floor again for any other questions that maybe I said something and it made absolutely no sense, or it spurred something else for you, or other reflections that I have not given you the opportunity to voice. And it's okay if not as well.
And if you feel comfortable, feel free to unmute yourselves to ask Reena questions directly.
Yeah, we have a very intimate audience, which is awesome, for a conversation like this. So please feel free. Okay. Well, if not, and I'll still hang out a little bit if you do have, if you're still typing. I just want to say, wherever you are right now, however you're contributing or responding, and whether you're missing just NC State's campus right about now, you are not alone in feeling this, and we are trying to figure out new and adaptive ways to respond. And your multicultural student affairs office really wants you to be okay. And I especially want to say a huge congratulations to everyone who, oh, my bad, who is graduating shortly, because no matter where you are and what's happening right now, what you've just accomplished and managed to achieve over the past however many years you've studied, that's amazing and something to celebrate. So still celebrate that. Thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn if you have follow-up questions. And then, as Marcella has put in the chat, there's a short survey I'd love for you to fill out just so I can get feedback. And then there are also articles that I kind of have referenced throughout my presentation that I pulled those quotes from that I've linked to in the presentation as well. But yeah, just a huge thank you. And I'll hang out for a few more minutes in case anyone does sort of want to talk more specifically. But thank you for sharing space with me today.
Yes, and thank you again, Reena, for sharing this. And I know that there are a couple of students in here. And so again, if you all want to have time with Reena or even shoot her a message, I know that Reena might be comfortable sharing her email. And so she is available right now. And just to also remind you all, she will be back with us on Thursday night with doing a dance class. So Reena is also a skilled dancer and will be helping us with our E of state. And so she will be having us move our bodies and dance and really share with the community. So if you're interested, please invite your friends, do it at home, do it together. But thank you all so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And yes, I don't know, Reena, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I am excited to see you all again Thursday. That'll be much less talking and much more dancing.
Cool, wonderful.